What happens when a leader challenges centuries-old power structures and demands true independence for his people? It's not just a question, it's a battle cry. Ibrahim Traoré is no stranger to this fight. As the leader of Burkina Faso, he has swiftly emerged as a revolutionary figure in the heart of Africa, challenging the forces that have long controlled the continent's destiny. His rise has been met with fierce opposition, culminating in an assassination attempt. A clear sign that his leadership is being viewed as a threat to those who benefit from the status quo. But why is he being targeted like that? Here, we would like to take a moment and thank you for supporting us and being a valued part of our strong community. And if you are not yet a member, we encourage you to join us and help build an even stronger community together. Let's get started.
Is that the assassination attempt on Ibrahim Traoré. Why? I think this is a plot to silence the Africa's rising revolutionary leader.
Ibrahim Traoré has been under constant threat, with numerous assassination attempts targeting him. Despite his efforts to lead Burkina Faso toward a more independent and self-sufficient future, powerful forces have made it clear that they will stop at nothing to eliminate his influence. His leadership, bold vision, and commitment to change have put him in the crosshairs of those who feel threatened by his rise. This ongoing danger has raised crucial questions about the forces working against him and the larger implications for Africa's future. But why is he under threat in the first place? There are many things that he did that caused many powers to attack him. Let's talk about it one by one and see who can potentially be behind the attacks. At the heart of Africa's struggles lies neocolonialism, the modern form of exploitation that keeps the continent tethered to foreign powers. Neocolonialism is the ongoing control over African nations by external forces, often through economic and political manipulation. Despite Africa's formal independence from colonial rule, many African nations still find their resources plundered and their political systems compromised by foreign influence. This form of colonialism, although less visible than in the past, remains deeply entrenched. Ibrahim Traoré's vision of true independence threatens this system. His call for African resource sovereignty goes directly against the decades-old agreements that have allowed foreign nations, especially Western powers, to exploit Africa's vast resources. Think of the resource-rich Congo, where colonial powers bled the land dry for minerals, or Nigeria, where oil has long been extracted with little benefit for the local population. Traoré's push for self-sufficiency mirrors the vision of leaders like Thomas Sankara, who in the 1980s sought to break Burkina Faso free from foreign control. Sankara's example still echoes in Traoré's policies, as he calls for a country that stands on its own feet, one that can control its wealth rather than see it drained by external forces. Then comes resisting foreign influence. Ibrahim Traoré's leadership is defined by that. In a world where African nations have often been forced to accept the dictates of foreign powers, Traoré's rejection of external control stands as a beacon of hope for those advocating for genuine sovereignty. His actions have made it clear that he is not willing to submit to the economic, political, or cultural pressures imposed by former colonial powers or their global allies. From the moment he took office, Traoré has been outspoken in his opposition to Western powers attempting to shape Burkina Faso's future. Whether it's through the imposition of Western financial models, political advice, or military presence, Traoré has made it clear that Africa must chart its path. His refusal to accept foreign dictates is a direct challenge to the West's centuries-old strategy of controlling African nations through both overt and covert means. This is evident in his stance against foreign-backed military interventions and his vocal criticism of countries that try to dictate African affairs under the guise of aid or peacekeeping. One of the most striking aspects of Traoré's resistance is his push for economic independence. The West has long used aid, loans, and trade deals to maintain control over African nations, often leaving countries dependent on foreign financial systems that perpetuate inequality. In his efforts to take control of Burkina Faso's economic future, Traoré seeks to shift the power dynamics, ensuring that the nation's resources benefit the people, not foreign corporations or foreign-controlled governments. His resistance to foreign loans and investments that come with strings attached further solidifies his commitment to this sovereignty. Traoré's push for African nations to control their resources is a direct rejection of the exploitation practices that have long characterized the relationship between Africa and the West. For too long, African countries have been forced to sell their resources to foreign companies at a fraction of their value, perpetuating poverty while external actors continue to profit. Traoré's leadership challenges this by advocating for resource sovereignty, ensuring that the wealth generated from Africa's land and minerals stays in Africa. This is not only a practical move for national development, but also a symbolic act of resistance to the economic structures that have kept Africa subjugated. Traoré's diplomatic approach reflects his belief that African nations must have the autonomy to make decisions free from foreign influence. Unlike many of his counterparts, who have either openly or covertly aligned themselves with foreign powers, Traoré prioritizes partnerships that respect Burkina Faso's sovereignty. His rejection of foreign interference in domestic politics and his openness to alliances with countries that share his vision of non-dependence demonstrate his dedication to securing Africa's future free from the shackles of imperialism. While Burkina Faso stands as the focal point of Traoré's resistance, his actions have sparked a broader movement across the continent. His rejection of foreign influence is seen as a rallying cry for other African nations that have struggled under the weight of neocolonialism. Nations like Mali and Guinea, which have also faced Western pressure, have shown solidarity with Traoré's stance, further emphasizing the importance of his leadership in the context of African unity and self-determination. His refusal to be bullied by external powers has positioned him as a symbol of Africa's growing desire to take control of its destiny. This approach draws direct comparisons to historical African leaders who resisted Western domination. Figures like Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana and Patrice Lumumba of the Congo stood firmly against Western powers, advocating for African unity and self-determination. Their legacies are marked by the same resistance that Traoré embodies. These leaders saw the future of Africa as one where its nations could stand independently and govern themselves without foreign influence, an idea that Western powers have long resisted. But that's not the only thing bothering the powers to go against Traoré. There is much more. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Ibrahim Traoré's leadership is shaking the foundations of African politics, not just with his stance against foreign influence or resource control, but also with his powerful efforts to shift the political landscape toward empowerment for the African people, especially the youth. For decades, Africa's political systems have been dominated by an old guard, leaders who, while often entrenched in power, have been disconnected from the needs and aspirations of the younger generation. This disconnect has led to stagnation, corruption, and a lack of meaningful progress in many nations. Traoré's efforts to break this cycle and include the youth in shaping the future of their countries are nothing short of revolutionary, and that's precisely what alarms the powers that be. For far too long, political elites have held a tight grip on power across Africa, often making decisions that benefit themselves and their allies, while neglecting the needs of the general population. The old guard has operated in an environment where power is passed down through networks of patronage and nepotism, leaving little room for the vibrant ideas and energies of younger generations. Traoré's leadership challenges this model head-on. By emphasizing youth participation in politics, he is pushing for a future where governance is more inclusive, transparent, and accountable to the people. This is a direct challenge to the established order, which has been sustained by the very exclusion of youth from political decision-making. Traoré's call for youth involvement is a stark contrast to the tendency of older political elites to either co-opt the youth for their gain or to silence them altogether. By offering young people a real seat at the table, he is dismantling the structures that have kept them sidelined for decades. This shift poses a direct threat to the political elite's power, because as young people become more politically active, they begin to question the legitimacy of the old guard, and their calls for reform grow louder. The entrenched leaders who benefit from the current system are realizing that this challenge to their power is not just a passing trend. It's a movement that could fundamentally change the political landscape of Africa. The growing power of Africa's youth is not an isolated phenomenon. Over the past decade, we've seen several youth-driven movements across the continent challenging corrupt governments and calling for a change in leadership. The End SARS protests in Nigeria, for example, saw thousands of young Nigerians take to the streets, demanding an end to police brutality and greater accountability from their government. Similarly, youth-led uprisings in Sudan in 2019 forced the ousting of President Omar al-Bashir, demonstrating the immense power that young people can have in shaping the political direction of their nations. These movements reflect a broader shift in the political consciousness of Africa's youth. They are no longer content to sit idly by as older generations continue to make decisions that don't address their struggles. They are determined to take control of their future, and Traoré's leadership taps directly into this desire for a new kind of leadership, one that empowers them, includes their voices, and addresses their issues head-on. Traoré's Pan-African vision aligns perfectly with the ideals behind these movements. His commitment to uniting African nations against both internal and external forces of oppression resonates deeply with the aspirations of African youth, who increasingly see themselves as part of a collective movement for change. By embracing this Pan-African ideology, Traoré offers a platform for young Africans to not only demand change in their own countries, but to also see themselves as part of a larger continental effort to reshape Africa's future. When Traoré champions youth empowerment, he is not simply making an ideological statement, he is laying the groundwork for a seismic shift in Africa's political dynamics. By encouraging young people to take active roles in shaping their country's futures, he is effectively decentralizing power from the old political elites and giving it back to the people. This approach is radical because it directly undermines the control that political families, military leaders, and business elites have held for generations. The youth are not just a demographic that will inherit Africa's future. They are the ones who will create it. Traoré understands this, and he's committed to making them an integral part of the political process. This change in power dynamics is precisely what threatens the entrenched political class. As more young people gain political agency and rise to positions of influence, the old political elites are beginning to realize that their grip on power is slipping. The once unchallenged systems of patronage, corruption, and political entrenchment are under threat, and the elites who have thrived on these systems are doing everything they can to resist this shift. Empowering the youth is not just about getting them to vote or protest, it's about giving them the tools to lead. Traoré's vision isn't simply about the participation of young people in the political process. It's about fostering a new generation of leaders who can govern with integrity, transparency, and a focus on the common good. This vision for leadership is fundamentally different from the political structures that have dominated Africa in the past, where leaders are often motivated by personal gain or external pressures. Traoré believes that Africa's future will be determined by the actions of the young people who are willing to break from the old ways and lead with a new sense of purpose and accountability. As young people begin to see leaders like Traoré as role models, they are inspired to take their steps toward leadership. This creates a ripple effect. What starts as a single leader's call for youth empowerment becomes a movement that spans the entire continent. The more young Africans believe they can make a difference, the more likely they are to push for leadership positions themselves, challenging the entrenched power structures that have long governed their lives. But that is not where his services for Africa stop. There was one thing that Traoré did and is doing that pissed many powers off. Let's talk about it. We all know corruption is one of the most insidious threats to Africa's progress. For too long, corrupt politicians and corporate elites have profited from the exploitation of Africa's resources, leaving the people impoverished and disenfranchised. Ibrahim Traoré is determined to change this long-standing pattern of corruption that has plagued Burkina Faso for decades. His unwavering commitment to rooting out corruption, not only within the government, but also throughout the broader society, has made him a target for powerful forces. These forces have profited for years from a system of exploitation, where corrupt practices have allowed individuals and companies to thrive at the expense of the people. Traoré's Crackdown is disrupting this cycle, as he pushes for transparency and accountability, forcing those who have benefited from the old system to confront the reality of their actions. His reformist policies, which seek to dismantle these entrenched networks of corruption, have created a ripple effect, making him a major threat to those who have long relied on bribery, kickbacks, and shady deals to maintain their grip on power and wealth. By challenging these corrupt systems, Traoré is not only working to secure the future of his country, but also directly threatening the interests of those who profit from maintaining a corrupt status quo. Through targeted reforms, Traoré has sought to prioritize the welfare of the people over the interests of the elites. He has made it clear that he will not tolerate the corrupt practices that have held back the development of his country. His approach is not unique. Other African nations, such as Nigeria, have similarly taken steps to combat corruption, particularly in sectors like oil, where multinational companies have long been involved in corrupt practices. These actions, while noble, have often led to resistance from local elites who benefit from the status quo. Now let's jump to the part you have all been waiting for. Who do all these reasons bother or harm? Who wants to take Traoré's life for challenging the system? Ibrahim Traoré's leadership is a direct challenge to a wide array of powerful entities, both within Burkina Faso and beyond, whose interests are threatened by his reforms and vision for the future. From foreign governments to local elites, many have reason to wish Traoré harm. His resistance to foreign influence, his push for economic sovereignty, his crackdown on corruption, and his efforts to empower the youth all disrupt deeply entrenched systems that benefit a select few. So, who exactly stands to lose from his actions, and who might want to see him silenced? Perhaps the most obvious beneficiaries of Africa's exploitation are the foreign governments and international financial institutions that have long held sway over the continent's resources and policies. Traoré's vision of an independent Burkina Faso, free from foreign control and influence, directly undermines their interests. His efforts to reclaim control over the country's resources, especially in a global system where African wealth has historically been siphoned off to benefit Western countries, pose a direct threat to the geopolitical balance that these nations have enjoyed. As Traoré stands firm in rejecting foreign-backed aid and influence, he threatens to endanger the long-established control these governments have over African nations, leaving them with less leverage and fewer resources to extract. For these foreign powers, a leader like Traoré, who refuses to bend to their demands and challenges their economic models, is a problem that must be eliminated if their hold over the continent is to remain secure. The Western-backed entities, including governments and multinational corporations, may be involved in efforts to remove Traoré from power, whether through political destabilization, economic pressure, or even more drastic measures. Alongside foreign governments, multinational corporations that profit from exploiting Africa's resources are some of the biggest stakeholders in this battle. Traoré's push for local control of Burkina Faso's resources directly threatens the economic interests of these corporations, many of whom have long struck deals with corrupt local governments to extract resources at rock-bottom prices. For decades, foreign companies have been extracting minerals, oil, and other precious resources from African countries, often with little to no regard for the welfare of the local population. By advocating for resource sovereignty and fighting against corrupt deals, Traoré is dismantling the very foundation on which these companies have built their empires. The threat to their profits is significant, and these corporations, with their immense financial power, could be working behind the scenes to bring about Traoré's downfall. If he succeeds in transforming Burkina Faso into a nation where the people control their resources, these companies stand to lose billions, making his resistance a grave threat to their business models. Within Burkina Faso, Traoré's efforts to challenge corruption and empower the youth pose a major threat to the political elites who have thrived on a system of cronyism, patronage, and personal gain. For years, these elites have been able to line their pockets through under-the-table deals, exploitation of state resources, and collusion with foreign companies. Traoré's call for transparency, accountability, and a government that answers to the people is a direct attack on their power. These elites, many of whom have maintained their positions through close ties to corrupt business interests, fear that if Traoré is allowed to succeed, their hold on power and wealth will be shattered. With their positions threatened, these powerful figures might resort to violent means to maintain the status quo, seeing the removal of Traoré as essential to preserving their grip on the country's wealth and political system. But Traoré's leadership is not only a challenge to Burkina Faso's internal elites and foreign powers, it is also a disruption to regional dynamics. Neighboring countries that continue to rely on foreign aid and the exploitation of resources may view his rise as a destabilizing factor. If Traoré's model succeeds in Burkina Faso, it could serve as a powerful example to other African nations, prompting them to adopt similar policies of self-sufficiency and resistance to foreign influence. This could lead to a domino effect, where more African nations begin to assert their independence, disrupting the regional power balance. Leaders in countries that have aligned themselves with Western interests or who continue to depend on foreign aid may see Traoré's leadership as a direct threat to the stability of the current order. As a result, these regional powers might be involved in efforts to undermine or even eliminate him, fearing that his success could inspire similar movements within their borders. Apart from that, institutions like the International Monetary Fund (IMF) and the World Bank, which have long dictated the economic policies of African nations through loans and debt, also have much to lose from Traoré's vision of financial independence. For decades, these institutions have tied African countries to crippling debt agreements, forcing them to conform to economic models that favor foreign creditors and multinational corporations. By promoting self-sufficiency and rejecting foreign debt traps, Traoré is directly challenging the financial leverage that these institutions have held over African nations. The potential for a shift in Africa's financial sovereignty, where countries begin to assert control over their economies without relying on external loans or aid, is deeply troubling for these global financial institutions. If Traoré's model of financial independence were to succeed, it could inspire other African countries to follow suit, diminishing the IMF and World Bank's ability to control the continent's economic future. As such, these institutions might be involved in efforts to destabilize his government, viewing him as a major obstacle to their continued dominance in Africa. Do you think Traoré will stay safe? Or will they try to get him? Let us know in the comments section. If Africa united, will all African leaders stay safe? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.